So, I'm really excited to be doing my Techspot on Raspberry Pi because I love pie and I think everyone does. They're delicious. So, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about the history of pies, where they originated, but first I'm going to talk about what a pie is. So, traditionally a
John,
pie.
it's a computer.
What's a computer?
It's a computer, Raspberry Pi. They made it into a computer.
This is a pie, Kiki.
No, the name is Raspberry Pi.
Seriously? That's good stuff. So what is a Raspberry Pi anyway? Basically, a Raspberry Pi is a credit card sized computer. It comes with an HDMI port so you can plug it into your TV or monitor, and it's relatively inexpensive. They're about $40 on Amazon. Also, 5 million of them, over 5 million of them have been sold, so that just shows you how extremely popular they got, especially for something that was originally designed for education. They were designed to teach kids how to program. So, you can see it's the size of a credit card. I didn't lie. The Raspberry Pi was developed by the Raspberry Pi Foundation, a UK charity with the intention of providing low-cost computers and free software to students. Their ultimate goal is to foster computer science education, and they hope that this small, affordable computer will be the tool that enables that. I'm going to be talking about some of the technical specifications of the Raspberry Pi in this part of the video, and some of the hardware and software that goes into the Raspberry Pi. I want it to be clear that throughout this whole video, I'm going to be talking about the Raspberry Pi 2 Model B, which is the model I have, and there are several earlier models of the Raspberry Pi that I'm not going to be specifically talking about in this video. So, what are some of the specifications of the Raspberry Pi? Well, it's powered by the Broadcom BCM2836 system on a chip, which I'll call the SoC. This SoC includes a quad-core 32-bit ARM 1176JZFS processor clocked at 900 MHz and a Video Core 4 GPU. It also has 1 GB of RAM in a POP package above the SoC. The Raspberry Pi 2 Model B is powered by a 5-volt micro USB AC charger, or at least 4 AA batteries. Well, the ARM CPU delivers real-world performance similar to that of a 300 MHz Pentium 2. The Broadcom GPU is a very capable graphics core, capable of hardware decoding several high-definition video formats. However, in order to keep the costs of the Raspberry Pi low, UK charity has only licensed the H.264 codec for hardware decoding. The Raspberry Pi 2 Model B features HDMI video output, 4 USB 2.0 ports, a 10100 Ethernet port, micro SD card slot, 40-pin GPIO, which stands for General Purpose Input-Output Expansion Board connector, and analog audio/composite video output. That's a 4-post 3.5mm audio video jack. I'm going to talk about some of the initial software for the Raspberry Pi. On the Raspberry Pi website, they offer the following operating systems. There's Noobs, which stands for New Out-of-the-Box Software. It's an EasyOS installer for beginners. We're going to feature Noobs later in this video. Raspbian, the official supported Raspberry Pi operating system, which is based on Debian. The Foundation also offers third-party programs, such as Ubuntu Mate, which is the Ubuntu desktop, Snappy Ubuntu Core for developers, and the Windows 10 IoT Core, as well as several others. In this part of the video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the use of Raspberry Pi in robotics, and some of the cool robots that have been made using the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi can take advantage of something called ROS, which stands for Robot Operating System. It's a collection of software frameworks for robot software development. It provides operating system-like functionality on a heterogeneous computer cluster. Basically, when people combine what they code in Python on Ross with things like infrared sensors and motors and wheels and arms. They can make some pretty cool robots, and there's been a bunch of cool robots that have been made using the Raspberry Pi. So we're going to check some of them out now.
看我，看前方，右转，左转，向后转。
In this part of the video, I'm going to talk a little bit about emulators. So basically, the emulators are something you're going to be able to load on the Raspberry Pi that makes it act like it's a Nintendo or a Nintendo 64 or a Sega Genesis. Basically any of these gaming systems, which I think is a really cool use for the Raspberry Pi's computing power. There's the Cupcade, the Super Game Pi, the Pi Girl Game Boy, and about 100 other retro console emulation projects to choose from, and that's just on the original Pi. The Pi 2 can emulate PS1 and N64 games, so if you're feeling nostalgic but don't have that old system, pick up a Raspberry Pi and enjoy reliving your childhood gaming. There are so many uses for the Raspberry Pi, but with all the cool projects out there, it's easy to overlook its use as a simple desktop computer. Let's see what happens when we introduce an amateur computer user to the Raspberry Pi.
Hey kid!
What?
I'm a computer! Stop all the downloading!
This is Kiki. She's going to be assisting me in demonstrating the use of Raspberry Pi as a desktop computer. So, as you see here, we have Raspberry Pi loaded on the starting OS, which is the noobs file, and it's already been put on the Raspberry Pi, which we have right down here, and lots of cords plugged into it. So, tell us what you think. Let's see some first impressions on this.
I see that there's a giant raspberry in the middle. It seems pretty simple.
Okay, so this is Linux that we're running, so it's not any kind of Windows, but why don't you get on Facebook or something?
Okay, so I'm guessing the internet.
Yep, that little icon she just clicked on.
And I'm not sure.
So you got to give it a second because
yeah.
it's a very small computer. It's not as powerful.
I'm not used to this
I'm gonna
slow.
do an over-the-shoulder view here. All right, so let's see if we can get on Facebook now.
DuckDuckGo. Huh?
Yeah,
What is that?
that seems to be the default search engine.
It's very different actually than what I thought it would be.
What were you thinking
I don't know.
that this would be like?
It seems like it's very up to date with like Facebook and stuff, but it looks very not old, just I don't know if primitive's the right word.
It has a simplistic user interface.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with it because it's not like Windows or anything, so it's like...
Let's take a look at that taco salad I made you earlier. It looks pretty good. All right.
I ate almost all of it. Oh look, I have a message.
All right, so do you think you would be able to use this as a desktop computer if you didn't have a lot of money to spend on a real desktop?
I suppose. I mean, Yeah, if I can, I'm a Facebook addict, so that's probably all I use it for.
For simple things,
For
just
simple
like
things,
browsing the internet. And,
Any random crap I want to look up.
yeah, so
It's
think
still
it's
pretty
a-
slow though, like comparatively to most. Anyways, there's that. I want to show everyone my whole profile. So,
all right.
what about opening tabs? Does that like slow it down and stuff?
Why don't you try it?
Well, we're gonna open another tab.
Um,
And let's see. I don't really know where to go.
try
This? Right here?
lower.
Oh.
No,
Oh,
no.
I minimized it.
Okay, this one. There you go.
Alright, there we go. So I guess if you already know what the icons are, then most of them are pretty simple, but I have crappy vision too, so let's just can it run Google? Does it do that?
Can it run Google?
Yeah.
Let's find out.
I'm guessing it would, but
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
yeah.
Here with our cat Dirt Pear, and Kiki, if you had to rate the Raspberry Pi in terms of dirt pears, how many dirt pears would you give it?
I'd give it 4 dirt pears
Out of how many?
out of 5 dirt pears.
4 out of 5 dirt pears. You heard it from the horse's mouth, people.
I'm a raspberry.
Meow, meow. That concludes my video on the Raspberry Pi. Hope you enjoyed it. Meow, meow.